And thank you for joining me again. Today, I want to take a little bit of time and just really jump into processes. This is designed specifically for organizations that are professional services organizations. But what I have found is that a lot of us do not have our processes figured out and documented. And from going to multiple organizations, what I have determined is that most organizations have the same processes. And so want to just kind of take a minute today to walk through what some of those are so that you can start to assess if you have these documented, what your maturity level is, and start getting you thinking a little bit about processes. So 90% of all professional services organizations have the same core business processes. I talk about the 5 pillars being people, sales and marketing, financial, intellectual property, and quality. And that means that we're all doing a lot of the same processes. You probably have an HR or a people process. You probably have a marketing process, a sales process. There's some operational process on how you execute your projects. There's some billing and accounts receivable processes. And then there's probably some ongoing improvements, some customer retention, some quality. How are we growing and improving our businesses? And so today, I want to just take a little bit to explain to you that we tend to look at processes and think, I want to be like the Coca-Colas of the world, and I want everything to be automated. I want everything to be connected. And we have to remember that as an organization, Coca-Cola is highly mature. And so it's important for you to understand, where are you at? If you're a new business, you're just a toddler, you're still learning how to walk, right? And if you have been in business for 10, 15 years, you just might be at this middle level. It's okay. I just want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of where you're at as you think through what those minimal operating processes are, which is really, what is the guideline? What's the intent? It's kind of the 5 big points and the 5 big steps of, these are the things we do. As you get a little bit more mature, you get into the who does them. And so everybody in the organization should know, what are these processes, who should do them, where they go to find them. Organizations that are in this middle phase typically review these maybe quarterly, maybe monthly, but they're really getting to that next level. And then the organizations that are really mature actually document down to the step of not only who's going to do it and what they're going to do, but how do they do it. And so a lot of ISO certified organizations are at this level, typically because regulations require them to be, but a lot of professional services organizations aren't. And that's okay. It is a process. So be gentle with yourself, but have a clear understanding of where you are so that we can walk through the initial minimal operating big 5 points, get that documented for your organization first and foremost, and then you can grow from there. So let's talk about the 80-20 rule. 80% of your processes are going to be pretty standard, right? And there's a few outliers. And so when I say getting to this minimal process documentation, I'm not saying that you document for every single scenario. I'm saying you document for the 80%. And so you may not have all of these steps. They may not be well defined, but typically in the HR process, you are doing some sort of a search, you're doing some sort of interviewing, you actually do the hiring, which then means you have to do orientation and onboarding. You may have quarterly or annual reviews. There may be some process that you go through when you have to let somebody go. And then there's probably something around benefits if that's something that you offer to your organization. So just understanding that we have all of those steps is step one. And then the next step would be taking it to the next level and saying, what do we do in the search? What are some of the places we would go to do a search? It could be really informal. It could be, I ask my friend, or I ask a peer group that I'm in interviewing. Again, might be very informal. It might be all the way to the point of, we have a common document where we go in and we take notes and we collaborate, and we have a scoring system perhaps where we stack rank and make decisions as a group. And it really varies. You may have set interviewing questions, right? Start gathering what you do have and where you're at. The next is the marketing process. So you're probably doing some sort of broadcasting. You may be doing social media, it may be word of mouth, you may be doing events, but you're probably doing something that you're getting the word out about your organization. So take a few minutes, start writing down what are those things that you're doing. And then maybe if there's additional things that you want to do, what might that look like? The sales process. This one is interesting because everybody has a sales process. Most people don't have it documented or defined. And I will tell you that when you get this documented, it changes the game because everybody can get on the same page and everybody can start talking the same language. So a lot of people will put in a CRM or some system that allows them to track their pipeline. Very few people identify what are the different phases in the sales process. So former employer of mine used pain, power, vision, value, close, and there was actually steps in each of those. So identifying pain, you didn't get out of that phase until you knew what the issue was and you were able to document that within the system. And then you couldn't get out of power phase until you knew who the person was with the budget and the signing power. And then the vision, you couldn't get out of that phase until you had actually documented what their future state was going to look like. And value, you couldn't get out of that stage until an estimate had been put together where you were showing the benefit realization and the ROI. And then close was not until there was actually a statement of work that was signed and returned. And so first step is just identify, do you have a sales process? If so, what is the common terminology? The next step would be, what are each of the requirements that are the stage gates that get you out of one phase and into the next phase? This is beautiful because when you get to this point, now when you start talking about opportunity and pipeline management and tracking, you can start applying percentages to these and saying, okay, in our entire pipeline, there's $1 million worth of business, but 800,000 of that is in the pain phase. Then we know that it's quite a long way until we actually convert that work into billable work. And so just start thinking about your sales process, operations processes. So every organization is doing some sort of resource management. Again, this may not be detailed. And I do have another video where I show you resource management and some of the ways that I've seen it done really simply within just an Excel spreadsheet. And there's organizations that have really robust systems where they're utilizing their ERP to understand utilization rates and understand availability. It doesn't matter what stage you're at, but you need to get down where you're at so that you can figure out where you want to go and what the steps are to get you to that next phase. Project kickoff. So again, you may not be doing this formally. I highly recommend that you develop a template for kickoff. And I have another video that I invite you to watch talking about what should be included in a kickoff. Elaboration is where we're going to go in and we're going to get all of the details. Construction is probably where you're going to deliver the service. And then what is your quality process? And then how do you move into a support? And then underlying all operations, there is always, where do we store documents? What is our document management? Who has access to what technologies are we using? So all of these are really great things to be thinking through and documenting. Accounting processes, accounts receivable, accounts payable, cash flow reporting, tracking. Are there any things you do in terms of investor updates or board meetings or open book management where you're sharing with your team what the financials for the organization look like? Most organizations actually have a pretty sound accounting process. And so this is the one where most people actually already have some documentation. And so that's great because managing our money is critical, obviously, to running a good business. And then this is one that almost nobody has, and I think that it's really important, is that there's some sort of a customer retention process. So after you service the client, how do you stay in touch, or how do you get referrals from them? And there needs to be a clear delineation from the time we get engaged and we build a relationship and a rapport and we start to deliver the project, and when do we draw the sand of the line that says, okay, this project is done, so that we can look at it and we can say, did we do what we said we were going to do? Did we do it well? What can we do to get better? And so I really recommend, if you don't currently, thinking about what that process looks like. Do you have a lessons learned? Do you ask for a referral or a rating? And if so, then how do you feed them back into the top of your funnel, either as referral partners or to capture their next project? All professional services organizations basically go through this life cycle in some format. There's usually the identification that there's an opportunity. You might have hunters and gatherers in your sales organization. And then when you identify that there is a need, so this is that pain phase, then you're going to go in and you're going to start solutioning. So what is it that we as an organization can do to help you solve those problems? And then it becomes, how are we going to do that? And so this is where you're going to be able to put together an estimate. You're going to start developing plans. You're going to develop a proposal. And if the client agrees and you guys are in alignment and have the same vision and agree on the pricing, then you can go into building and execution. And so this is really where there is that handoff that says, we estimated it, we planned it, and now somebody needs to actually do it and deliver it. And then once it's done, this team needs to be able to say, all right, we're done. We did what we said. Let's check back to the plan that we put together and say, how did we do? And if we did really great, then how do we turn that into a referral? It doesn't matter what processes you have documented if people aren't using them. So I've worked for so many organizations that have said, I know we need to document the processes, but it's not worth my time because nobody's going to use them anyway. So I'm not proposing that you document processes for the sake of documentation, but I propose that you document processes because you want people to be able to make quick decisions. You want people to be able to focus on the customers, because after all, as a professional service organization, that's why you exist, is to serve your customers. And so I'm here to help you serve your clients better. So I would just ask that you identify where you are, gather anything that you currently have documented, rate your organization on 1 to 5 of which of all the processes we just went through is most important, and what organizational maturity level are you at within each of those areas. And I don't propose that you tackle all of these at once. I would pick one key area to focus on and then identify the person who knows the process, the person who's actually doing the work, and then start scheduling some meetings to gather all of that information, to decide where this source of truth is going to be, who's going to own it, and how often the processes are going to get reviewed. And put those meetings on the calendar now. And then you can go ahead and you can start educating your teams on, hey, this is where we're at. And you'll start to see so many places that are room for improvement, for operational improvement. And it'll give you a kicking off point and a starting point. But don't implement all the changes that come out of this process at once. Make sure you watch my video on implementing change and assessing change within your culture so that you're not overwhelming your team. But this is a great place to start. If you don't have your processes documented, hopefully this has given you some framework, some ideas of where to start, some ideas of how to go about implementing and starting getting your processes documented. My team is here and available to help and answer any questions you have. Here's my contact information. If you need anything, feel free to reach out. Thanks and have a great day.